Hello everyone, and welcome back to the next practical session of our Reflective Dialectic. As I say every time, I do appreciate your active participation, and let me this time not forget the people online, listeners online. Welcome to you as well, behind the camera lens. Right. Today we're going to talk about feminism. Remember, we finished critical race theory and we're now in feminism, and I asked you to look at Michelle Wakim interviews. She was a journalist, and I asked you to look at the YouTube session and let's comment on that. She did interview people, and we're going to look specifically at one or two of those interviews. My name is Philip, and I facilitate these reflective analysis sessions. Now, let's get into it. As I mentioned previously, the purpose of this reflective dialectic lectures are to make us more informed and efficient in communicating within diversity politics or identity politics. Now, if we look at the journalist Michelle Wakim, she's from Australia, and these interviews comes from the Women's Day in 2023 in Australia. Now, in one of her short interviews she didn't mention who it was. She just asked people what do they think about feminism, and one said, I support it if it means equal justice for both genders. That's very basic and very original, but unfortunately, even if this seems fair, it raises a question: is that what's happening? Is that what feminism is today? And I think not. And although I do not agree with the statement that another interview he gave, that feminism are groups of women who think they are better than others, this unfair critique tells you that their measures do not support the equal justice for both genders statement. So, I think his interviewee got it correct, and I think the other interviewee got it correct as well, but they're not saying the same thing. But where I really want to come to is Dr. Laura Roberts. Now, she's a gender studies lecturer, and if you've looked at the previous practicals we did, and especially if you've been attending the lectures, you know that I've got a beef with academics within this field. Been there a long time, done a lot of it. I know them, I think, quite well. Now, Dr. Laura Roberts asked about the essence of feminism. She said, feminism is a political movement against sexism, but she does not clarify what sexism is. And so I have to assume, for this practical, that she means sexism to be unfair discrimination and the oppression of women in the liberal monarchist countries occupied by European type people. Now, why am I saying that? The unfair discrimination and the oppression, that's standing. And I'm qualifying it. The question is why. And I'm qualifying it in liberal, modernist countries occupied by European-type people. Go and have a look. What you see is always this same scenario. Every time. But even though Dr. Roberts didn't tell us what sexism is, she assumed we know. There's a lot of assumptions going on. She gave us an historic overview over what feminism is. And that's something we want, isn't it? Now, she starts with a take note of this one, a late 19th century. Now, I'm in the fortunate position that I knew people who were born towards the end of this 19th century. They're not with us anymore, which is obvious. But I knew them as a young man. So I've been a young man a long time ago. Then she said, in the 19th century, the mobilization for women liberation was organized by the suffrage society, or suffragettes, what they call them. And they campaigned for the right of women to vote. Now today we take our votes for granted. They had to fight for many years for women to get the vote. Now, that was in the late 19th century. They got the vote in the early 20th century, which is kind of my century. Right, what did they want? The right to vote? And it was more than that, because they had little personal independence. They got married, the man was everything, they had to be in the kitchen, they had to raise the children. They couldn't even file for divorce. Now there are still cultures where women can't file for divorce, still cultures where they have to remain out of sight in the kitchen, tending to the children. But here we're looking at the liberal modernist countries, as I've said earlier. And they fought for it and they won. They also had no financial independence. They had no property rights. They couldn't go and work. So that was the situation at the moment, at that stage in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And women in Australia got the right to vote in 1902. And I think the USA was 1920. So they got the right to vote earlier in Australia than in the United States. I think the United States people should feel a little bit of shame about that. Now, that was the first wave, these suffrage societies. And they operated around about the turn of the century from the 19th to the 20th. The second wave of mobilization of women liberation was organized during the 1960s, 70s. And it was mostly about the productive rights of women, about the contraceptive pills, which just hit the market and could help women to manage their pregnancies, or having them or not. And that was what this was all about, or what this was mostly about. Different people have different ideas. What I didn't see was sexual harassment, which should have been part of it, but I don't see too much of it. So abortion was also another thing which women wanted, abortion rights. When it was essential and when it was there was no other choice. So that's what they fought for. Now, the first wave, Dr. Roberts didn't say that, got their way. Women can vote in Western liberal countries. And they can have property, and they can go and work today. And the second wave was also quite successful because the contraceptive pill was approved by the people who approve medicines, the FDA in America, for instance, and women can use it. And also abortion was on the cards, except in 1924 in the USA. The Republicans are trying to turn all this back and turn us into some Christian nationalist regimes where none of us is allowed. Women will go back to the kitchen barefoot and have children. That's what the Republicans want. If you don't like it, well, that's what I've said. You can take it up with me. I mean, it's so clear. It's as clear as day. So why are the women voting for the Republicans when that's on the cards? I can't understand. The people in the 1960s, 70s achieved something, and now you wanted to take away from them because of nationalist Christianity ideas, of non-liberal ideas. Right. So that's where feminism succeeds. And that's what I would call not purity feminism, but real feminism, real productive feminism. That's what I would call that. They could change laws to improve their ways of being. So let's get back to Dr. Roberts instead of my critique. She does not confirm the critique I've just given you, but she rather shifts the blame. What do? They shift the blame. Instead of an appreciation for the fact that new movements feminism creates a more equal, inclusive world for all, some men's rights groups see contemporary feminism as taking something away from them. She's not asking whether modern feminism, a critical, radical feminism, is doing something good. No. She's looking at the backlash. It says, men are wrong. Men are trying to keep their patriarchal power base by saying we're taking something away from them and we're not doing it. Now, it may be true. I don't know. She says that feminist actions take nothing away from men. On the contrary, women and gender diverse people are still not safe. Safe from what? Okay, all people should be feminists, she says, and anti-racist, and inclusive and aware of inequality. All people should be feminists, anti-racist, inclusive. Remember that one, I'm going to get back to it. For all people. It sounds perfect, but I'll get back to it. Thus, Dr. Roberts uses Karl Marx's trick, but say deny, 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 and shift the blame, which I've already said. Now, however, in order to equalize, one must take from the haves to give to the not-haves. Remember, we're not taking away anything from men. But how do you equalize something if you don't take it from those who have and give out what you've taken to the have-nots? So it's obviously that something must be taken away from someone. Except if there's something new in the system. And you can give it to those who don't have, because it's something new. You don't have to take it away. So, what she's suggesting is there's something new in the system. No. What? I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? There's nothing new. Which means she's lying. They are taking away from something from me. Using pure logic. It's not as simple as that. What is as simple is when you have a radical movement, you can be for sure, and you can ask the Chinese wisdom people for the past 2,000 years, if you go radical on one side, the other side will emerge. That's an old Chinese wisdom. And that's exactly what's happening here. They're going radical to the side, and a radical emerge on that side. And instead of saying, okay, maybe we've gone too far this way, they're blaming the other side. I'm so over it. Now, I want to get back to that all people should be feminists and racists. There's so many men will stand and say, I'm a feminist. On earth. Okay, you may be, but here's my problem. If all people must be radicals or feminists, then the dialectic disappears, and so do all radicals or feminists. So if everybody is a feminist, there's no dialectic anymore. It just disappears. And as soon as the dialectic disappears, the radical must disappear. It's just pure logic, that's all it is. So, yeah, it seems a perfect statement, but there's nothing perfect about it at all. And that's not even going back to postmodernism, who says nothing should be certain. She's very certain here. So she claims to be a radical postmodernist, but she violates her first principle. Right, then there was another interview. This was Dr. Roberts. There was an interview with Kimberly Van Janine, if that's how you pronounce it. I've got no idea. And she was a cultural consultant. And she gives us a lesson in intersectionality. Remember that word? It's a gender brief with intersectionality as focus point. And immediately, now it's not said here, but I can tell you this. You will see it when you look at the YouTube video from Adi van Heerden. There's a fourth movement in feminism, and that's what we're talking about here. There was a third as well, but This is a 2012 kind of thing. She describes intersectionality as layers of oppression. We're all victims, and some are greater victims than others. These multiple layers of oppression in the system can impact on a person because of that person's race, gender, and sexual identity. Sexual identity or sexual preference or orientation we're talking about mostly, and you'll know it by now, is the LGBTIQA+ movement, which makes no sense at all, but we'll get back to that at a later stage. This is a standard simple mentally mind explanation. Mentally mind, remember? It doesn't exist in reality. It's imagined and it's projected onto reality. This is what we're dealing with. She feels, this is Kimberly Van Janine, but no harm is done by contemporary feminism. This is a 2012 version. Because it is just a space to create equality for all. It's as easy as that. Equality for all. Remember late 19th century, which is actually not late 19th century. It was 1848, which was mid-19th century. So Dr. Roberts doesn't have the facts quite correct, but she's only a lecturer. So I don't expect her to have her facts correct. Only a lecturer. Or only a professor, for that matter, or only a doctorate. No harm is done because they want equality for all. Is that true? Absolutely not. But let's assume. She therefore suggests that we need to ignore the negative messages about feminism. So what she's saying is, don't critique us, we're perfect. We are above your critique. You may be, but I'm still going to critique you. So, the patriarchs, and they've got the power and they're above everything. Okay, I wonder what we've got here. Not matriarchs, but anyway. So she's asking, what happened to we are prepared to listen to reasonable arguments? Oh, that's me asking that. If she says we must ignore the negative messages, then my critique is, remember under critical race theory, we are prepared to listen to reasonable arguments? Gone, out of the window. I'm asking another question. Is there no energy consumption and structural constraints in feminist space to allow for the free creation of more equality? Not everybody can be equal. We can have equal opportunities, yes. But everybody equal or equity, it's just not enough energy in the system. Well, I have to go back to the Big Bang and change it there. You might not believe in the Big Bang. You might not believe in the Big Bang. Don't throw me with something. I'm not saying I'm believing it. I'm just saying that's a theory. Right. I've got issues with it. I kind of believe it, but I've got issues with it. So now you know where I'm standing. It might just not be true, even if I wanted it to be. Right. To be equal is no problem with energy in the system. We've all got all the money we want. We've all got swimming pools, 4 cars, a house with 8 rooms, and 3 fridges full of food. So, third thing I feel I can critique contemporary feminism about. should we also ignore those feminists who were pushed out of our contemporary feminist movements? Now, if you look at enough feminism videos, you'll find those people who were pushed out. They couldn't go with a radical movement. It was just too much for them. They wanted to remain practical and rational and reasonable. Within reality, they want to have equal rights with men. And there's nothing wrong with that. They want to be able to vote. They want to be able to go to parliament. They want to have property, like men do. Not in my case. My wife has a property, not me. So, that's what the 1848 feminists wanted. That's all they wanted. They didn't want all these radical things. Now, so they were pushed out. And they're critiquing modern feminism, and Wakim says, we'll just ignore you. So, right. Then she declares herself, probably rightfully, as a voice for the First Nation of Australia. The voice of the First Nation of Australia. Now that gives me two things to wonder about. For those of you who've been to the lectures, attended it, you'll know where I'm going with this. First of all, in order to decolonize the country's existence, she must shift the First Nation to the foreground. But in doing so, she measured the existence against the colonial occupation and the occupiers as a legitimate current nation. So, when she talks about the First Nation, she measures it against those who are coming in. Those who come and colonize the country. So, by stating the First Nation, she has kind of taken the decolonization away. I know it's technical and maybe philosophical, but it's my critique. Right, where were I? Second thing, she actually set the historic horizon in typical postmodern style at the point of European occupation. Again, we're getting back to that. And in so doing, she can ignore the real first occupants. Because who were in Australia? Who was the First Nation? Homo sapiens. Who's coming in? The colonizers. Homo sapiens. It's the same thing. Same species. So there's nothing strange about them. Neither of them are the first occupiers of that land, actually, because the first occupiers of those lands were other descendants of Homo erectus. There's quite a few of them. I think there's about 12. Quite many of them within that Eastern Asian area. So, the First Nation is actually Homo erectus. And Homo sapiens was the occupiers. So the First Nation, according to her, actually occupied the land, took it, colonized it from Homo erectus. So, let that be my critique then. She doesn't have a historic perspective which is deep enough. Now, she declares herself available to be the voice of an Aboriginal woman. Remember, it's intersectionality, first the race, now the woman, who experience sexism and other forms of oppression. And she's got a statistic for it. We are 33 times more likely to be hospitalized. Hospitalized for what? She doesn't say. It leaves me wondering, are these 33 times more likely reflecting only assault cases? Men, white men, assaulting or the occupiers, males, assaulting the First Nation women? Is that what she's talking about? I'm not sure. Or all men are now assaulting the First Nations women, but not the occupiers women. Something like that. I'm not sure. But let's continue. So, is it intergroup violence here, or is it intragroup violence? I'm just asking. What could be the reason for this high number of cases? And here's the problem I have. Can the colonial liberal laws and the colonial support systems be of any benefit to them, to help them, so that they are not 33 times more likely to end up hospitalized? Can we use the colonial created systems to do that? Right, I told you this was going to be a short one. So thank you for listening to my critical and dialectic analysis. It is now time for that break we normally take. And when we get back, there's going to be, hopefully, some heated debate. And remember, next time, we're looking at Dr. Finn McKay on feminism. Thank you. See you later.